Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall,
host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Wednesday, the 19th day of February. Thanks so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. On assignment today, I'm at the White House. So today I'm leaving you with some fantastic conversations you have not heard yet. Great interviews. Settle in. Enjoy today's show. Tomorrow I will have a complete report on our visit to the White House. Thanks a lot for giving this a 5-star review and a written review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you get an opportunity to do it, it's always helpful to the operation here. We're grateful that you do that and let other people know about the podcast. You have helped this thing grow by leaps and bounds with your support over the years. We're so thankful. And we also can't do it without your support of our sponsors. And the fact that we have great sponsors in the podcast means everything to the operation. So if you enjoy listening to the podcast, if you don't mind rating it, and if you don't mind supporting great sponsors like our title sponsor, John Ruhlman. John has been with us now for a few years, and he is absolutely the best when you're looking for the best prices and the best coverage in health insurance. usmedicalplan.com is his website. Now, all you need to do is set aside, let's call it a half an hour. Reach out, usmedicalplan.com, or call 877-410-4321 and tell them what you're paying right now and what you think about your coverage right now. Or maybe you have some questions. You're just not really happy with your current health insurance situation. They'll talk you through your options. And here's the thing. At US Medical Plan, they know 100 different private health insurance companies. So they're going to get you the best possible price and never going to skimp on coverage. I know a lot of people think, well, if it's cheaper, it's not going to be as good a coverage. Not true. In fact, what you'll find when you work with US Medical Plan is oftentimes you're paying more. You're paying much more than you should be for health insurance for not as great a coverage. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. Environmentalism. What does it mean to you? Well, like I think most of us, we all appreciate clean air and clean water and no pollution. What is unfortunate about the subject of environmentalism is it's been perverted over the years to mean a bunch of silly Green New Deal projects that somehow have equated to climate and regulating the climate. And it's gotten away from things like clean air and clean water, and now we're talking about trying to control the weather. In my view, I've gotten to know pretty well a lady that we welcome to the show today named Mandy Gunasekara. She has authored a book called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. And Mandy used to work over there at the EPA. She was, in fact, the former EPA Chief of Staff in Trump's first term. Mandy, I welcome you back to the show. Thanks so much.
Yeah, great to be with you.
So as you watch this second term take shape of Donald Trump, Lee Zeldin now the EPA pick, I guess first I'll just get your 30,000-foot view, then I want to kind of dive into what I was just talking about. What do you see?
Yeah, the president isn't wasting any time. And we saw this before he was actually sworn in with the picks that he made across the board and the up to 1,000 political appointees that were almost ready to go on day one. And this is totally different than how it was the last go round. So he's not wasting any time. And then with the executive orders that have been issued, he's not wasting any time implementing the America First vision that he talked about on the campaign trail and that Americans really wanted. And a core part of that is unleashing U.S. energy resources, coal, oil, and natural gas that have been under the thumb of a weaponized Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Interior, and others because Joe Biden didn't like fossil fuels. Well, President Trump has come back in and said all energy resources are open for business, and it's already had such a positive impact on the American experience. Day-to-day optimism is restored, but also the markets are reacting in positive ways.
It seems to me that somewhere along the way, and I don't exactly know when it happened or how it happened, but somewhere along the way, the electorate became convinced for a time, I think that time is over now, that Republicans weren't for the environment, or somehow Republicans just were not great at saying, no, we don't like pollution, we don't like dirty water or dirty air. But the Democrats artfully made climate pollution. That's something I think people should not miss. Whenever that bridge was made artfully by the left, that climate is pollution, I think that's when we kind of got knocked back on our heels a bit. I think Trump has helped push back on that, and I think you did, your EPA, and maybe this next one. You agree?
Yeah, I think that's a great characterization of what the left did. Ultimately, they took important missions like EPA to protect public health and the environment, and they corrupted it for purposes of fulfilling socialist ideals. And climate change is their favorite boogeyman because it requires complicated science and it requires a lot of technical understandings that the general electorate frankly doesn't have time to dig into, and I don't blame them. But the left uses that ambiguity as a means to scare people into accepting their socialist style policies that are antithetical to independence and a lot of foundational values that are important to be an American. President Trump, he's not only shown a light on this, but he's pushed back. He's called out a lot of their ridiculous policies and their ridiculous statements, and he shifted the focus of environmentalism back on what it should be. It's on tangible improvements that help the citizens of today, not some far-fetched day after tomorrow scenario that may happen 100 to 200 years into the future, but nobody's going to be around to assess whether or not it was accurate. And President Trump, in the process of doing this, has given Republicans a voice in environmentalism. For so long, they ceded it to the left, and that was a source of a lot of our problems.
Yeah, Mandy, I'm struck that as we speak this week, much of the country is in a deep freeze, a polar vortex, dangerous cold, and out west, fires rage. Now, those are two subjects that Trump has discussed. Maybe not so much the cold, but cold is deadly. These fires could have been prevented. That doesn't necessarily fall under the EPA, but it's funny to me that the left, who purports to be so eco-friendly and people first and all of this, their lack of management of the forests and their unwillingness to acknowledge that we're in a deep freeze and we can't access cheap, plentiful energy to keep ourselves warm. I have to laugh that they're, people first and environment first. People are dying.
Yeah, that's right. And the environment they purport to protect, it's going up in smoke, literally, in California. And it goes to show you that the left's policy isn't about taking care of people or the planet. It's pushing their own political agenda and solidifying their own political power. What President Trump has rightfully said, if you have responsible leaders that are willing to do the hard work, which is thinning out forests, taking responsible management of dead trees and things along those lines, shoring up water infrastructure, or knowing that when it's the winter, it's going to be cold, that power lines are up to date with the latest and greatest technologies, the impact on humanity can be significantly reduced thanks to a better understanding and the evolution of technology. So that's what the focus should be on. It shouldn't be distracted by this climate change agenda that really took over the whole government and manifested itself in a number of serious consequences to the everyday American, mostly in the form of inflated costs. But as we've seen in North Carolina, California, and throughout the South in some areas, it has devastating consequences on life.
Mandy Gunasekara is a author now, in addition to her former work as the EPA Chief of Staff in the first Trump term. Her book is called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. Trump has talked a lot about this Delta smelt, the water in California, which I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, does that fall under the EPA when you're talking about water management out west, or no?
Well, it's mostly the Department of Interior,
okay.
But it's also the state organizations. EPA does have a role, but it's a lesser role. But mostly Department of Interior and the state agencies. Yeah,
and to me, here again, this is a government management issue. Trump was saying this yesterday, that Democrats don't, they're causing havoc because of a fish, ostensibly because of a fish. Southern California doesn't have access to water. It's bananas to me that you're on an ocean and it's 2025 and we can launch communication satellites and land rockets back on a landing pad, but we can't figure out how to pump seawater onto forest fires in California. That seems odd.
Yeah, it's odd. And it's because the extreme environmental movement has taken over that state in many ways. I mean, I was listening to someone talk about, the giant airplanes that scoop up the water to drop it on the fires. In some instances, they have to go 20 miles away to a lake or to a water source to pick it up, because even though there's a body of water that's closer, it has some sort of protected species in it. And so you're looking at a difference of being able to come back and pour water in 2 minutes versus 20 minutes. And we've seen how fast these fires move. So there's a lot of level setting and balance that is ultimately needed. You don't have to sacrifice the economy for the environment, or vice versa. You don't have to sacrifice human life to save the environment. If you have a balanced, reasonable approach, then you can have it all: a thriving economy, a robust energy industry, and a protected environment with healthy people. And that is the vision President Trump implemented in his first go-round. And I have no doubt, under the helm of soon-to-be confirmed Administrator Lee Zeldin, the same will be achieved and some.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you about, Lee Zeldin. What did you learn as Chief of Staff at the EPA in that first round of Donald Trump? It seems to me, and we've been talking about this, these first few days, he is laser focused. It seems like they've hit the ground and they know exactly what could stymie them, what potential roadblocks, what interloping bureaucrats might be hanging around. Their eyes wide open this time. What did you learn at the EPA? What do you think Lee Zeldin and the team in the White House know now that they didn't maybe know then, that you guys didn't have the benefit of knowing?
Yeah, I think a lot of us didn't realize what we were up against in terms of how the deep state operates. I mean, they have all sorts of tips and tricks to undermine policy, to also try and undermine the credibility of the political appointees making various decisions or implementing policy direction on behalf of the president. Now we all know this, so it's eyes wide open, and that experience matters. The other big difference is in the Trump administration, the first go round, remember, we were still pariahs in the political world. So those of us that went in, we didn't have the benefit of those who had worked in previous Republican administrations willing to share their wisdom and experience.
This is so funny you say this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mandy. It is so funny you say this. Sean Spicer said something to me similarly. He said, I really am kind of jealous of this incoming bunch because there are political winds blowing at their back and goodwill that we did not have, to your point.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a lot of that. I mean, I think people also put the mainstream media in their place, whereas when we all went in, they still looked at some places like the New York Times, the Washington Post, or CNN with a degree of credibility. I think they all shot themselves in the foot throughout COVID and Russia hoax since then, and the public rightfully looks at them with an eye of skepticism. But this go round, it's not just those of us who had experience that are helping the folks that are actually going in. It's also this broader, diverse coalition of people. You have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, RFK Jr. I mean, this is an amazing group of people with talent, resources, and networks that are coming in to fix a problem that got out of control over the last 4 years and caused significant harm to our friends, our neighbors, our industries, our cities, the safety of this country. And so all of that together, it's night and day, and it really is a beautiful thing to see.
I would ask you, because you're a younger woman, and you now are in, I think, a bit of consulting work now and things like that. When you look at the politics of what Trump has managed to achieve, what did we learn and what should we learn from the way he won? I've been making this point that people like AOC, whatever you think of her, it's undeniable. 8 million followers on Instagram. She talks into a camera for 2 minutes and people listen. That kind of thing is the way Republicans need to think. Trump mastered it with podcasting and whatnot. Do you think the Republican Party gets it? There's a new way to communicate?
I think some in the Republican Party do. There's always holdouts, and the difference of Republicans and Democrats is that Republicans still appreciate independent thought. So you're never going to have everyone get on board or fall into line on the Republican side. But I do think for the most part, Republicans realize that voters more than anything appreciate authenticity. You don't have to be a perfect person. You don't have to ascribe to some higher moral standard. You just need to be who you are and lay out a vision that people can believe in and get behind. And those are the qualities of a leader we want in this country. Those are the qualities of President Trump. And I really think that that's why he not only won the electorate, but the popular vote, because he was willing to embrace who he was and engage with people on platforms that they used every day.
Yeah, Mandy, it's great stuff. The book book is fantastic. Y'all Fired. She's down there in Mississippi. Our favorite guest from Mississippi, Mandy Gunasekara. So great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. Well, the numbers don't lie. Balance of Nature and the impact it's making every single day is astounding. You see the numbers for yourself on their website at balanceofnature.com. Listen to the stats from Balance of Nature, their worldwide success. You ready for this? More than 1,000 success stories reported every single month. Hundreds of thousands of customers worldwide. Millions of orders delivered each day. Billions. Yes, with a B, billions of fruits and vegetable supplements consumed by people who've decided to start living a better life. We take them at the house. I've got them up in the cabinet. Take them every day. There's only one number that's missing out of all of this, and that's you. Do what I did. Add yourself to these numbers. Start taking Balance of Nature. They're whole food supplements, like so many others around the world. And here's another number that'll get your attention. 35%. What is that? You use my name, Chris, as your discount code. You'll get 35% off, plus free shipping and a money-back guarantee. You got to use that discount code, Chris. 800-2468-751. And use the discount code, Chris, or order online, balanceofnature.com. Again, discount code, Chris, to get that 35% off, plus free shipping. One of the major issues surrounding our border is not just people breaking into the country and committing crimes once they're here, although I guess that's part of it, but it is also the epidemic of fentanyl in this country. It is killing people indiscriminately, both because it's being trafficked and sold, but sometimes quite accidentally. It's entering into our food supply, into our drug supply, and a guy who knows it very, very well, and I've spoken with him before. He's an expert on the issue. Dr. Robert Marbut is the producer of a program called Fentanyl, Death Incorporated. He's also the former White House homelessness czar and joins us now. If you haven't seen Fentanyl, Death Incorporated, by the way, it is at salemnow.com. If you haven't streamed it, you ought to. And Doctor, it's a real pleasure to have you back, sir. Good morning.
Thanks so much for having me back, but more importantly, thank you for caring about the fentanyl crisis. We got to get the education out on this.
Yeah, and you really did enlighten me the last time we visited, but for people that might have missed that conversation, the state of things has gone rapidly from, I'll speak for myself, a guy who 5 years ago didn't know the word. I'll just plead ignorance. I didn't understand or know the word fentanyl. To today, I hear it just indiscriminately killing people with just tiny little trace amounts. So how did we get here?
We got here partly because fentanyl is so dangerous and so potent, and so such a small amount will kill you. And it really came onto the scene really fast. And unfortunately, the last 4 years of the current or the past administration, the Biden-Harris administration, they really were asleep at the wheel. And part of it is I think they were slow to react. The other part was they didn't want to have an honest conversation about fentanyl, because you can't have an honest conversation about fentanyl without talking about the border. And I think the most important thing that any sovereign country of the world has to do is know who's coming across the country line, the border, who's coming into your country, and what are they bringing. I think that's the most fundamental role of any sovereign government. And they didn't want to talk about fentanyl because that would sort of not meet their political narrative that they were trying to do on having more open borders.
Dr. Marbut, just so people understand it, because the stats you shared with me the last time we talked it just blew my mind. I don't know that everybody really quantifies and understands what fentanyl is, how it gets into our system, either food or drug supply, and how it kills. So just can you enlighten people who don't know, how does one come into contact with it, and how little can do big damage?
Well, fentanyl is dangerous because it's the most dangerous synthetic drug ever made, and it's a synthetic opioid. It's 100 times more powerful than morphine. 2 to 3 grains of salt will kill anybody. Think about that. If you pour salt on a table, you might get 20 grains. That kills 6, 7, 8 people. 1/15 of a rice grain kills one person, or 1 rice grain of fentanyl would kill 15 people. And you can barely see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, so you don't know you're getting it. And now fentanyl is you hit it right on the point, is you got addicts who are dying from it, absolutely sad, horrible situation. But fentanyl now is the fastest growing killer of children 0 to 4. Think about that, 0 to 4. They're not calling a drug dealer. They're not an addict. They're just being exposed to fentanyl. First responders are having this issue. Many first responders have been dangerously, interacted with fentanyl. And so according to DEA, roughly 70% of all illicit drugs now has some tracing of fentanyl in it. And sometimes that's purposeful. Think Kensington in Philadelphia, where they mix horse tranquilizer with fentanyl. That's purposeful. But you also have the situation where they're making fentanyl on Thursday night and the wholesaler then makes weed on Friday and they're using it on the same table and they don't clean the table. This is not white coat laboratories in a negative vacuum environment. These are back alleys, basements, jungles in some cases. And so they don't know how to not have the cross-contamination with other drugs. So you may smoke weed.
Yeah. In some cases, Dr. Marbut, to your point, it's not always even intentional that drug pushers are cross-contaminating their drugs with fentanyl. It's not always intentional.
I often come across in many parts of the country, especially Midwest and the Southeast, where both the user, the wholesaler, the dealer, none of them expected to have fentanyl in it, but it's so contaminated the process. And it's part of it's because it's contamination, but the other part is because it's so potent. Just small dust basically can get in. So they may not even, in fact, many parts of people of the country, the user doesn't know, the dealer doesn't know, and the wholesaler doesn't know that
Could I ask
mixed
you, Doctor,
in with whatever.
Yeah, to that point, Dr. Marbut, again, Fentanyl, Death Incorporated is the film at salemnow.com. How do people avoid it? What are best practices? I mean, because I assume any of us could accidentally come across it, yes, if we're not careful?
Absolutely. You should never take any drug of any type unless it's sealed and comes from a pharmacy. So just start right there. You shouldn't be eating on a park bench unless it's thoroughly cleaned. And that's where a lot of deaths happen, out in park benches and open area. If you see spent foil that's probably been used for fentanyl, foil, straws, any of that, do not touch it without having proper protection, like a thick latex glove. I used to pick trash up, for example. When I'd go into homelessness encampments, I don't do that anymore because I assume so much fentanyl has tainted everything.
Wow. And then where it comes from, are we to still believe that most of it is being imported, or is it being made domestically? People like China, for instance, and people to our south.
Well, it all started when China, with the precursors, working with the Mexican cartels, backfilled all the people who were addicted to Purdue Pharma. And so when all the lawsuits with Purdue Pharma came out, suddenly nobody could get synthetic opioids. And so the cartels backfilled the supply chain and did it. But that was sort of phase one of fentanyl. We're now seeing more and more fentanyl come across the northern border. And we're starting to see some of the street gangs in the United States make it themselves.
And so, Doctor, when the Trump administration cracks down on the border, I assume that's a huge part of stopping the flow, but probably not all. How responsible must we hold China and foreign governments specifically to act, maybe through tariffs or other threats?
Well, that's the exciting part, because President Trump got more done in the 4 weeks after being elected, not even taking office, but elected, than the prior administration done in 4 years. And you have to get China's help and support on the precursors and now pre-precursors. We have to look at the cartels, and we have a successful model. We did that really well with Colombia, where we went in and did joint operations with their security services, their law enforcement, with our special operations. So we know how to do that, and we've done it before and been successful. We also have to start really worrying about our northern border. A lot of people are not aware the Canadian-U.S. is the longest shared border of any two countries in the world. And so we have a lot of fentanyl coming across the northern border. And then the next thing we have to do is recriminalize fentanyl and high-end drugs in the United States. Places like California, Washington State, Oregon were legalizing these things. And in other parts of the country, people were not prosecuting these. Or, places like Philadelphia and Georgia, a few places in Atlanta, were simply not, even though it was on the books and they knew it was illegal, they wouldn't prosecute it. And so we have to firmly send the message that fentanyl is deadly and we need to treat it like a deadly compound rather than saying, we're not going to prosecute it or we're not going to criminalize it.
Yeah, is it made as easily as something like methamphetamines? I know meth is, we talk about meth now like that's made out in the hinterlands, in the sticks. People can take common household items and make meth. Is fentanyl made that easily as well?
In some ways, fentanyl is actually made a little easier. And
Wow.
we have a Reuters reporter we interview in our movie, and we show a documentary that he put together in information. And he was able to get about $3,600 of supplies, mostly on the internet, darknet, Amazon, things like that, and get the components and mix it and have an equivalent of a $3 million of street supply with $3,600 of sort of ingredients, for lack of a better word, that you order on the internet. And so it is sad how easy this is, and it's so potent at the same time.
And I would bet then, much like I was referencing, we're seeing this not just in your urban core big cities, but I would bet there is a real demand for this in rural communities where there's a lot of poverty. People could make some money, right, and get high at the same time.
Well, exactly right. And fentanyl started as a back supply for the Purdue Pharma addiction. And most of those people had had surgeries and got addicted to painkillers as part of the surgeries. Then it moved into the real urban areas, especially into the homelessness community. But now it is the fastest increases are rural areas in America. I've been out with sheriffs who say they've done the reversal agent, Narcan, twice on a person in one shift, in one tour of duty in a day. And so it is now everywhere in America.
And Narcan, incidentally, if someone has ingested it or is, maybe near death from complications of fentanyl, Narcan works?
It is working less, and I think we want to not create the myth that that's the magic elixir, because part of it is if you do the mix of like tranquilizer, they call it Trank on the Street, which is about 30% horse tranquilizer, 70% meth. If you do the Narcan, the reversal agent, it helps on the fentanyl part, but it doesn't help on whether it's meth or trank or some of these other byproducts that they mix in. And the other thing is I'm getting very worried about people who've been hit with Narcan 10 times, 12 times, 14 times, because when you die, you clinically die. You stop breathing and your heart stops. Fentanyl does is paralyze your chest cavity. So you have your oxygen stops coming into your lungs because you're not breathing, and it stops circulating because you have no pulse of your heart. And so you go brain dead. And so everybody gets hit with Narcan in a reversal have spent 2 or 3 minutes without oxygen. And that's no different than a heart attack or a stroke. And over time, you become vegetated.
Dr. Robert Marbut, the film is called Fentanyl, Death Incorporated. It's at salemnow.com. And, sir, we are so grateful for your perspective this morning. Thank you very much. I am awfully proud to talk to you about Global Coin because these guys, Stefan and Ryan and the team at Global Coin, they were so good to the show. They enjoyed it. And when we launched nationally, they said, we would like to become sponsors of the show. And I couldn't commend them to you more because they're really good people. I know that you hear a lot about different ads and people investing in this and that and gold and silver and all that. All I can tell you is having personally done business with Global Coin, these guys are the real deal. And whether you collect or whether you invest, this that I'm holding right here, I have one of these. I became a customer and purchased this 1-ounce gold eagle. This 2025 1-ounce gold eagle, if you'd like to purchase it yourself for $2,999. Free shipping, no sales tax, and no gimmicks. It's MS-70 condition. If you do that, the first 100 people that hear my voice talking about this 1 ounce Gold Eagle, you do that and you're going to get a 1 ounce silver Buffalo Bullion round for free to complement this Gold Eagle. Yeah, totally free. They're going to send that 1 ounce silver Buffalo Bullion round. So that's two iconic coins, and it's a real testament, of course, to the enduring value and the resilience of precious metals like gold and silver. Global Coin backs every single purchase with a 30-day return policy, ensuring your peace of mind, too. So pick up the phone, call them, and tell them Chris said hi. Shopglobalcoin.com/Stigall, shopglobalcoin.com/Stigall, or call 888-560-3125 today. Here we are, 2025. Happy New Year, and our friends at Gulag America are back and along for the ride. You know, they have been not only great sponsors, but they have been ride or die founders at the Harump Society. I am so appreciative for our friends at Gulag America. I love the work they do, and we have every reason to be optimistic in this new year. They are, we are, all of us are. America's resurgence, it's back. Trump's back, and Gulag America wants to continue to be your premier source for topical and satirical apparel and other gear designed to help give you voice for your love of liberty and your desire to see America great again. I know we all share that in common. Gulag America does too, but that doesn't mean that the deep state's not going to be busy at work. They're not going to go gently into the good night, as they say. So Gulag America is ready. They want you battle ready. They want you geared up, and they've got hilarious stuff for you to buy, and they're going to give it to you at a deep discount to kick off the new year. You ready for this? You take 15% off all orders at gulagamerica.com when you use my promo code Chris15. So if you go shopping today and you see a shirt you like, and you will because they're hilarious, go to gulagamerica.com, type the promo code Chris15. That's Chris15. Type it in the checkout, and then you'll save big. Enjoy the new year. Enjoy new savings with that same quality, that same hilarious attitude that you've come to expect from our buddies at Gulag America, where they say, it's not our wish, it is our warning. I don't know anything about it. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't get it. I mean, I understand what AI is. I use Grok from time to time on X, Elon Musk's version of it. I've never used ChatGPT. But I get the concept. I get what AI is. I understand it's here. Obviously, it's important to Donald Trump. He hit the ground at almost day one. That was his first big announcement, that he's going to pour a lot of resources, time, energy, and has made public-private partnerships to develop AI. That's what I'm guessing, led to China announcing, hey, we've developed something a lot cheaper and just as good as you guys. And it caused, as you know, the NVIDIA stock to plunge, the people that make the chips for AI. I'm really shorthanding this because I don't totally understand it. So I said to Fast Eddie, can we get somebody who does understand it? And he said, yeah, you bet. How about the Senior Research Associate for Tech Policy at the Heritage Foundation, Daniel Cochran? I said, great, if he's willing. And he was. So Daniel, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
So good to be here.
Again, shorthanded that, but my assessment of it is Trump and the tech guys around Trump said, AI's coming, it's big, it's important, we need to be at the forefront of it, and China kind of did this shot across the bow to say, oh, no you don't, we're ahead of schedule. Is that about right? Are we in sort of a, if you want, a tech Cold War with AI?
Well, I think it's apt to call it a tech Cold War. That's what it is. And I think China's move is very strategic. Look, they released the latest model, R1, on President Trump's inauguration. They're trying to send a message that they are ahead. And frankly, the way that the U.S. stock market reacted to that is, I think, in accordance with Chinese goals. Like, they want to discourage investment in America's AI sector. They want us to back away from investing in the hard infrastructure and the underlying chips that NVIDIA is creating. I mean, in the short run, you saw the stocks in those companies tumble. So hopefully what we're going to see is American investors and businesses getting smarter and thinking more long-term about beating China rather than just reacting to their propaganda in the short term.
Daniel, can I just kind of dumb this down for my layman's brain when we talk about AI? I get what it is. I understand that it takes a ton of energy, like physical energy. That's what's kind of interesting, particularly about people on the left who are supportive of things like the Green New Deal. We're heading into a technological advancement with AI that requires an extraordinary amount of literal power, energy, and that isn't going to come from the sun and wind. I mean, these big tech companies, first things first, they're quite literally onlining their own nuclear plants, is my understanding. True?
Well, that's right. And in fact, that's what Microsoft is doing in Pennsylvania, trying to bring back a nuclear facility and repurposing it for to power data centers that will be used to train these models. Now, in terms of why AI, LLMs in particular, takes so much energy, there's really two reasons. The first is the training stage. So it takes a lot of energy to compute the data that you have to feed the AI algorithms so they can learn, right? That's what makes AI so powerful is you have to train them. They learn kind of like humans do, right, over time. And once they've learned, once they've sort of gained enough experience, they're able to solve problems. And at that point, what you're looking at is how much money does it cost for the company or for the models to be able to process the requests that you and I provide on a daily basis. And the real concern here, what DeepSeek's done and the Chinese are attempting to do, is undercut American companies by providing a more efficient model, meaning it takes less energy to process and compute the requests that we give it, and it's able to therefore provide the same amount of or the same level of performance at a lower cost. So that's, I think, China's game, and we have to get wise to it in the U.S. And you know, Americans have always been innovative and competitive. We rise to the occasion, and this, I think, is a challenge. I mean, China's throwing down the gauntlet here, and it's time for both our government and our companies to dedicate themselves to beat China in this race, because it really has significant implications for our national security, economy, and American values.
Daniel Cochran is the Senior Research Associate for Tech Policy Center at the Heritage Foundation. And you can follow him, by the way, on X at RealDCochran, Cochrane. The use of AI. This is something that this audience, if I'm to be honest, am dubious about. Concerns, ethical concerns, worries that, some people, it's funny, the great Rush Limbaugh, who I admire maybe more than anybody in broadcasting, was a huge fan of technology too. I remember this about him. And I remember him kind of laughing at the idea that people were terrified that technology was going to conquer the human race, because he always said at the end of the day it was humans controlling the technology, and that was always going to be the dynamic. But there are kind of these people that live in a headspace that believe that one of these days these things will become so smart they can overtake us all. Where are you on that?
Well, look, I think that's actually a distraction from the real problem. And I think there was a kernel of truth in what Rush was saying, right, is that technology reflects values. Who builds the technology, right? That determines the value set that technology is going to reflect. And this is why America's competition with China is so critical, right? This is a war over values. Whose values is going to shape the future of the world? Because if you think about it, right, AI and technology like it, that's what enables that's going to be the bread and butter of the modern economy. So the question here is, will we allow the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, to embed their values in the fabric of America's economy and society, or is our American values going to remain paramount in the technology that we use to fuel our markets and the markets around the world? That's really what's at stake. So the real concern over AI is not that it will become Skynet, but rather that the Chinese Communist Party is going to continue to shape it, and American companies are going to use that technology and embed it in their stacks and give China an outsized ability to influence our citizenry above and beyond what they already have, which unfortunately is substantial.
And can you walk that out then? I mean, I know we're speculating and what-ifing, but what would that ultimately mean? If China were the driver in influencing much of how AI operates, how could that change us culturally? What does that mean?
So, I mean, think about the current example with TikTok, right? So TikTok, used by 170 million Americans in this country, controlled by the Chinese company ByteDance. What it means is that the Chinese Communist Party has a real-time window into the life of millions of Americans. They're able to monitor, they're able to know your deepest secrets, your most intimate thoughts. And now extrapolate that over the whole of our economy and society, right? So now you have Chinese tech embedded in the tech stacks of our most powerful corporations, right? So that's everything. We're talking about AI, right? That might be everything from the AI agent on your hotel booking site to maybe running the software that's making hiring and firing decisions, right? I mean, so the values here, I mean, the way that they could affect our society is really, I mean, immense. It's sort of everything, because as you know, Chris, like a value proposition of AI is a force multiplier in a lot of different settings. So it's not just like going online and asking ChatGPT questions. It's really American companies using this technology in the back end operations, and all that bias, all the ideological values of the CCP, right? It's embedded in those algorithms, and that's going to be. Yes. I mean, now think about all American companies, large and small, using that. That's really significant, and it's really a tactical advantage for the Chinese Communist Party to influence and sway Americans.
I suppose since the advent of the automobile and the Industrial Revolution, there's always been advancement in technology, mechanics, machinery that have eliminated certain jobs. I've heard it said, and I know for a fact, my industry, take as an example, AI at present already has programs that can quite literally create talk show hosts. You could argue that most of my team and me don't even need to exist. We could create a whole show without us. And our industry is not alone. What do you say to people that say AI will just wipe out a workforce?
Look, I think one could make an, I think the automobile, right? What happened when we had more efficient means of transportation is, there were some old industries that went out of business, but it actually opened up completely new opportunities that would be unthinkable without those technologies, right? So without the automobile, without the truck, I can think about all the small businesses that wouldn't exist at all, right? Because you wouldn't have the logistics infrastructure necessary to enable them. In the same way, AI, while it's going to change, I mean, there'll be some folks that will be out of work, but it's going to open up entire vistas of new opportunity that we can't even imagine. And I think it's really critical to note what's going on here with DeepSeek. Going back to the Chinese question, is the less energy it takes to run these AI models, the cheaper they are, and the more able we are to integrate them and use them across our society. So if we think about this in terms of American competitiveness, the companies that are creating LLMs here in the U.S., whether it's Meta or Google or OpenAI, right? Hopefully smaller companies too, using Perplexity with their own kind of search product. The real goal there is to lower the barriers to use this technology so that more people can access it and use it more. It can be a force multiplier, not just for massive corporations, but for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, for creative professionals. That's where I think that's the American vision for AI. And that's why it's really critical that we win this race with China. That's the sort of value set, if you will, that's on the line. If we lose, it's going to be Chinese industry, right, under the control of the CCP that's running the show. It's not going to go for the benefit of American entrepreneurs. So that's the real, I think, the real stakes here.
And Daniel, just with 30 seconds to go, are we winning? Are we losing? Some have said the Chinese are kind of beating their chests falsely, sending out a false signal that they're winning. Are they leading? Are we winning?
I think it's too close to call. I think if anything, DeepSeek sends the message that the Chinese do have serious capabilities. We need to take that seriously, but we can't believe the hype. China wants America to back down on our commitment to innovation and investing in this critical technology. We need this as an opportunity to lead in this crucial area, to push American innovation and leadership forward, to embed American values in this technology and push it forward.
Trump clearly agrees. I mean, it was literally his first item up for bids when he hit the office. So Daniel Cochran is over there at the Heritage Foundation as the Senior Research Associate for Tech Policy. We appreciate you, Daniel, and I hope we can keep leaning on your expertise. Thank you. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about him, Bob.
Yeah, Chris, I can't begin to express how proud I am, obviously, of having my daughter there. Also, Dr. Geddes is just a wonderful addition to our practice. He is a classmate of my daughter Alexa's at Temple Dental School, and I have known Jared for about 7 years now. Getting to know Jared over the years, it was my wife Debbie and my daughter Emily who kept telling me, "You have to hire Jared. You have to hire Jared. He's going to be a superstar." Jared went off to USC, did a 1-year residency after his year at Temple, and he came back and he worked for about a year in practice in New Jersey. And after, again, my wife and daughter beating my brains in, I got the message and I hired Jared, and he's been a great addition to Williamsburg Dental.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Hey, welcome back to the show. We talked with a gentleman a couple of shows ago that we weren't really able to fully explore everything that he had to offer, and he was such a fantastic conversation, the brief window that we had, and then he and I were kind of talking offline a little bit just before this interview, and I feel like I could probably sit and talk with him for several hours. We could do a whole show together, I know it. Dennis Neal, I welcome him back. He's a former CNBC and Fox Business anchor. He's the current host of a podcast called What's Bugging Me, and he's authored a book called The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. We tried this once before, Dennis. We think now this is going to work out much better, so welcome back. Good morning.
It's great to see you, Chris. And is that just a beautiful cover shot of Elon or what? I love that cover that HarperCollins and Broadside Books put together, man. I got to tell you.
This is so much fun. And you, as a guy who comes from covering a lot of business, and now you've written about him, it's Time Magazine even had to admit most Americans are not mad at a billionaire tech guy having a look under the hood of government. Most Americans are not mad at that. They actually like the idea of it.
And a good portion of Americans, I think, are delighted by it. And think how President Trump, with Elon Musk's, his new BFFN, best friend for now, with Musk's help, they've pushed the Democrats into defending outrageous programs, outrageous, inefficient, wasteful spending, funding LGBTQ events in the third world. I mean, and now they actually have to come out, the Democrats, and say these are good things. And my gosh, how did this happen?
What's Bugging Me podcast. Let me dive in that quickly, just because I don't want to lose track of time and not get to talk about it. What do you do? Is the podcast exactly what it says? What's bugging you?
It's exactly what it says. And here's where it starts. At Fox Business Network, I was an anchor. And twice a week, I got to do 60 whole seconds about what's bugging me. They had a logo. My glasses would split and my face would turn red. And of course, everyone goes on television for a job because they are dying for attention. And I loved it. Well, when I was fired with 15 minutes notice from Fox Business and escorted out by a security guard at some point, I couldn't find another job. No one would hire me. And I thought I was great at this. And finally, started with a column on Newsmax.com, What's Bugging Me. And then, because I got the rights to that name, that precious name that no one knew when I left Fox, and then started the podcast 2 years ago. And we've done some great things. And, kind of prophetically, Chris, I did an early episode with Vivek Wadhwa, Silicon Valley kind of overseer who had been to dinner with Elon a few times, called him a friend. And he says a month or two after Elon bought Twitter, look, the guy's been eating too many drugs and they're eating his brain. That's the only reason he would buy Twitter. Well, look where we are 2 years later and what he's made out of Twitter. And now I've done the book on Elon, and having helped Lou Dobbs, the late, great Lou Dobbs, write a book on Trump, the parallels between Elon and Trump are just rather striking.
Yeah, it's funny, Dennis Neal, that, and your brand new book, by the way, called The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. I think there are people that are enemies of Trump or don't want him to succeed, who don't want to see him in the White House. I think there are a lot of hopeful people. I think Time Magazine putting Elon Musk behind the Resolute desk. They're all kind of needling Trump, hoping to play to what I think is an old ego of Trump. I think Trump's changed. I think his attitude's different. I don't think he's going to fall victim to this the way he maybe used to. They think they're going to be able to poke Trump and make Elon Musk his enemy. He's getting too many headlines or whatever. Trump doesn't seem to be falling for it.
Well, the thing is, Elon is of great use to Trump. Elon is the sharp tip of the Trump spear. And Elon is now taking all of the heat. He's become public enemy number one. My gosh, the Democrats are othering Elon, the party that's in favor of letting in millions of illegal immigrants come across the border and get better benefits than we give to Americans, suddenly says he's South African. He doesn't understand democracy. Maybe his grandparents were Nazis. It's unclear. I mean, they're suddenly doing all they can to hurt the man that they used to love, all because of his political stance. And yet the things they are uncovering, it's just remarkable. And the biggest thing was that some 6,000 journalists were in some way on the dole from 700 media outlets, 280 NGOs getting money from USAID. And Chris, during the Twitter's files expose, which was the most egregious and rampant violation of the First Amendment rights of thousands or even millions of Americans who had the right to hear those views on these social media platforms, I kept saying, where was the media? I wrote 24 columns. I did 10 different podcasts on it. And that's more than the New York Times and Washington Post staffs combined. I kept wondering, Chris, where are they? Why aren't they upset? Is this why? Because you guys were getting all kinds of money? They have Politico supposedly charging $34,000 a year for a single subscription because, this is high-end stuff. It's exclusive. We're watching, the goings on in the corridors. Oh, you know what? That's bull. That is a payoff. Nothing in Politico or anywhere, frankly, is worth $34,000 a year per reader.
Yeah.
I think this is a way of buying peace.
You understand the new media landscape. It's largely subscription-based. We all are kind of playing it a little bit. And when Doug Collins says, as the new head of the VA, I'm terminating a $178,000 line item called subscriptions to Politico Playbook from the VA. Dennis, I mean, come on.
Why do they even need that? And here's a parallel. To me, it feels like 80% of the commercials on television today are from drug companies, pharmaceutical giants advertising bizarre little drugs at super small patient sets that actually have the disease, yet they're running ads to millions of dollars. And then I read a post on X that I wish I had written that points out, well, you buy peace. The networks can't do negative stories on you, on your vaccine, on this or that drug that has bad side effects that have just popped up. They won't do that story if they're relying on drug companies for a large portion of their ad money. So the ads may not be about selling more of the drugs at all.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. Dennis Neal, the podcast is called What's Bugging Me. The book is called The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. Having worked at Fox Business, and you just said summarily, and I believe me, as a guy who's been fired more than a few times myself, I'm familiar with this. What do you make overall of the media landscape? It's really quite something to see how Caroline Leavitt and this team at the White House are utilizing new media and communicating in exciting new ways. It's got legacy media on the run.
Oh my gosh. And I put out a podcast episode 2 weeks ago called Sweet Caroline. She's a breath of fresh air. Lesson 6 in my 11 lessons of Elon, I love alliteration. Lesson 6 says free speech is everything. Stand up and be heard, right? That's why he bought Twitter, turned it into X. Lesson 7, maybe even better, it says, on the media, to hell with them. They are shameless shills. Why your PR department is a waste of time. And man, Elon has shown this, and the media fear him for it, and they resent him for it, even as they use his platform to extend their reach vastly beyond what they otherwise would be able to get to. Do you know the New York Times print circulation weekdays down to like 300,000? I mean, this is a teensy publication that's lucky to be on the X platform.
Yeah, and by the way, you bring up corporate America. It's interesting. I think Elon Musk has kind of shown the way. Corporate America doesn't have to bow at the altar of this DEI garbage. I don't think they need to feel obligated to check all these social construct boxes anymore to placate the mob. I hope corporate America is learning that these woke young hires of theirs who've been running the asylum shouldn't have the voices and the influence that they do.
I was shocked to begin with when these companies started kowtowing to the DEI agenda, literally taking a knee. Let's remember Jamie Dimon, CEO, JP Morgan, taking a knee after the George Floyd stuff. Okay. I was shocked that they went that far. I was shocked that Blackstone's leading the way to DEI and ESG and governance. And it was wrong to say that it's no longer just about how much you can return to your shareholders who own your company. Now it's about employees and how they feel. Now it's about the community. Now it's about LGBTQ rights and sustainability. No, it is about returning to shareholders. And then if those people want to fund whatever causes they want to fund, go for it. And we're getting back finally to the purpose of capitalism and enterprise and the profit motive. And it's to maximize returns by providing a better life.
Dennis Neal is the host of a podcast called What's Bugging Me, his brand new book, The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. Dennis, it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I do hope you'll come back. This has been we've had a great conversation both on air and off. I hope it will continue for a long time to come.
This is the start of a beautiful friendship, sir. Have a glorious day.
Amen. Hey, President Trump is moving at lightning speed in his first weeks in office. Executive orders, new policies, promises kept, and it can be hard to keep up. Until now, if you subscribe to the Trump Report, it's a daily email and it brings you all the highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Get all the details on the administration's top actions that day with in-depth analysis. Stay up to date on what President Trump's doing each and every day to make America great again. And be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of it. The Trump Report. Get it today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump. That's SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump. So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through. You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.